Everyone for coming today. Welcome to our fourth day of thesis defense. We're going to start off with Rainer. Rainer has, I've really enjoyed talking to him through the year and watching his thesis about the budget sort of develop over time. And it's really developed a lot, and he's done a great job. These are Rainer's words. He says, I would like to thank God, Mr. Wade and Miss Maymay as my rhetoric teacher, Miss Usney as my advisor, Mr. Rio as my co-advisor, and all the teachers who have helped me that is too much to list them all out, and all of my friends who have helped me as well. So Rainer's title is A Golden Bridge to 2045, How Reallocating the APBN Can Build a Golden Indonesia. Give me just a couple of seconds to start the timer, and I'll tell you when you can go. All right, you can start when you're ready.
Generasi emas, generasi cemas, or generasi gemas? This is all with question. Which one do we want? Close your eyes and imagine Indonesia in the year 2045. The cities are modern, industries are thriving, and the economy is stronger than ever. But one important question remains. Who will build and sustain that future? Will Indonesia have a healthy, skilled, and productive population capable of competing globally? Or will it struggle with weak human resources and inefficient policies? The answer to this question does not begin in 2045. It begins today in how Indonesia manages its national budget. Every year, trillions of rupiahs are allocated across various sectors. Yet not all this allocation contribute equally to long-term national development. Inefficient subsidies, underfunded welfare programs, and the limited budget in the tourism infrastructure demonstrates how inefficient spending can slow economic progress. Therefore, if Indonesia wants to achieve the vision of Indonesia Emas 2045, the government must readjust the national budget towards more productive sectors. Remember, the clock is ticking. The decision we make today will echo for decades. Let's go to the history. Initially, the national budget system has undergone through significant transformation during its national budget. Initially, during the Dutch colonial policies, the national budget first came, and then after gaining independence, Indonesia attempted to restructure its financial systems, although early efforts were often unorganized and lacked clear directions. During the New Order era, the government relied heavily on the national budget to stabilize the economy. While it helped contain inflation, it increased dependency on external borrowing and created structural weaknesses. Recognizing this issue, the government attempted to restructure its financial system. During the major reforms was implemented after the New Order era. It introduced greater transparency, stronger governance, and improved fiscal discipline. Despite all these improvements, challenges still remains. In 2024, Indonesia has a strong revenue performance, but still experiences a significant budget deficit. This reveals a critical truth that the effectiveness of the upper band is not determined by how much money is collected, but by how wisely it is spent. Therefore, to achieve the vision of Indonesia Emas 2045, we must move beyond the illusion that the budget is already well managed enough. We must refine our spending so that the upper band can act as a powerful bridge towards a prosperous future. Before we go further, I would like to establish a common definition. First, Indonesia Emas is a term of Indonesia's bright future with a sovereign, just, fair, and prosperous country. Second, the APBN is the national budget right now that needs to be readjusted because of some inefficiency issues. Lastly, the fuel subsidy is a term where the government gives financial assistance towards the prices of fuel, which purpose to lower production costs and keep low consumer prices. So, Indonesia should readjust the budget system for these three reasons. First, the fuel subsidy is misaligned with the goal of achieving Indonesia Emas 2045. Second, the limited budget in the tourism infrastructure hinders the sector's growth potential. And lastly, the MBG program is ineffective. One of the most significant inefficiencies in Indonesia's APBN lies in fuel subsidies. In basic terms, the fuel subsidy is misaligned with the goal of achieving Indonesia Emas 2045. For one reason, inefficiencies are happening in fuel subsidies in Indonesia, where it leaks budget instead of helping the economy grow. These subsidies are designed to make energy more affordable for the public by controlling its prices. While they provide short-term relief, their long-term impact is highly problematic. A major issue with fuel subsidies is that they are regressive. Instead of primarily benefiting low-income households, they disproportionately favor high-income groups. Wealthier individuals tend to consume more energy and they have greater access to private vehicles. As a result, they receive a larger share of the subsidy benefits, while poorer households gain relatively little. The concept of opportunity cost in this context is particularly relevant. Funds allocated to fuel subsidies could otherwise be used for infrastructure development, education, healthcare, or even technological innovation. These sectors generate long-term economic benefits and contribute to sustainable growth, unlike subsidies, which are quickly consumed without producing lasting value. Second, there are distortions that are created by having fuel subsidies. Fuel subsidies create economic distortion. Suppose that Pertalite, which is supposed to be 16,000, subsidized to 10,000. That would be better, right? No, it wouldn't. The 6,000 was given back to the government, and the people, they still struggle with the same paycheck. They are not getting richer. This deadweight cost instead creates a gap between the poor and the rich. This also hinders technological development, making Indonesia less competitive in the global economy. Third, targeted welfare serves as an essential engine of the path to Indonesia Emas 2045. A more effective approach is to replace universal subsidies with targeted welfare program. Direct cash transfer, for example, allow the government to provide financial assistance specifically to low-income households. But the problem with direct cash transfer is that they can be used for anything, like online gambling or even smoking, which are the two corrupting sectors. With this problem, another solution is to use a program like SARA in Malaysia, where the government gives the citizen in need a card that is subsidized to buy the main resources only for a family to live. This ensures that resources are used more efficiently while reducing unnecessary spending. By reallocating funds from fuel subsidies gradually to productive investment, Indonesia can strengthen its economic foundation and support long-term development. Second, the limited government budget allocated to the tourism sectors restricts Indonesia's ability to develop its tourism sectors efficiently and reach its full economic potential. First reason, Indonesia should invest in infrastructure improvements to enhance tourist attraction. Indonesia has immense potential in the tourism sector thanks to its natural beauty, cultural diversity, and unique heritage. Destinations like Bali for heritage and Raja Ampat for snorkeling are recognized globally. However, despite this potential, Indonesia's tourism industry has not reached its full capacity yet. One of the main challenges is the lack of infrastructure. Imagine going to a place you've always dreamt of just to get disappointed by the 20,000 parking fee. Transportation networks, public facilities, and accessibilities plays a crucial role in attracting tourists. Poor infrastructure can significantly reduce the appeal of even the most beautiful destinations. For example, long travel times, limited transportation options, and inadequate facilities can discourage tourists from visiting certain areas. In comparison, neighboring countries such as Thailand and Malaysia have invested heavily in the tourism infrastructure and promotion. As a result, they receive significantly more international visitors each year. This demonstrates that natural beauty alone is not sufficient. Effective investment and planning is essential for success. Strategic investment in tourism infrastructure, from roads and airports to world-class facilities, does more than attracting visitors. It elevates their experience, turning from one-time tourists into a long-stay, high-spending guest. Indonesia should improve its workforce capabilities to maintain its tourist destinations. Human resource development is equally as important as in the tourism sector. A skilled workforce ensures high-quality service, which directly impact visitor satisfaction and international reputation. Training programs, certification, and education can help workers meet global standards, making Indonesia more competitive in the tourism industry. Third, inefficient APBN allocation and limited budget for the tourism hinders the sector's growth potential, weakening tourism's ability to be a strategic engine for broader economic development towards Indonesia Emas 2045. By increasing investment in tourism infrastructure and workforce development, Indonesia can transform this sector into a powerful engine for sustainable economic growth. This aligns with the broader goal of achieving Indonesia Emas 2045 by creating jobs, increasing revenue, and strengthening the nation's global presence. Lastly, the MBG program in Indonesia is currently ineffective due to the high implementation costs and poor targeting beneficiaries. The MBG program represents another significant challenge in Indonesia's APBN allocation. While the program aims to improve child nutrition and support human capital development, its current implementation raises concern regarding efficiency and sustainability. One of the main issues is the program's high cost. The estimated annual budget required for the MBG is extremely large, creating a fiscal burden on the government. This can lead to a crowding out effect where funding for other essential programs is negatively affected. Programs like Program Indonesia Pintar, which provide financial support to students from low-income families, may be negatively affected. Another major problem is poor targeting. As a universal program, MBG provides free meals to all students. This results in inefficient use of resources, as assistance is given to individuals who may not even need it. In reality, only a small percentage of children experience severe food insecurity, meaning that the large portion of the MBG is spent unnecessarily. MBG creates high food waste and safety risk due to the lack of localized supply chain and cold chain infrastructure. Infrastructure limitations further complicate the program. Indonesia's vast geography and limited cold chain infrastructure make it difficult to distribute food safely and efficiently. Without proper storage and transportation system, food is at risk of spoilage, leading to waste or even potential health risk. Reports of food safety issues during early trials highlights these challenges. Lastly, adopting the USA's decentralized and performance-based cash reimbursement model can transform the MBG from a fiscal burden into a precision tool for both public health and economic growth. Without proper storage and transportation system, instead of directly distributing food, the government provides funding to schools based on eligibility criteria. This allows for better targeting and reduces logistical complexity. Additionally, involving local farmers in the supply chain can create economic benefits for rural communities. By sourcing food locally, the government can reduce transportation costs, improve food freshness, and support local economies. This approach transformed the program from a fiscal burden into a tool for both public health and economic development. Some critics argue that reallocating the APBN will not lead to meaningful improvements due to corruption and mismanagement. While corruption is a valid concern, it should not be used as an excuse to avoid structural reform. Not all inefficiencies are caused by corruption. Many result from poor allocation decisions and ineffective policies. Improving the structure of spending can still produce significant benefits, even in an imperfect system. Ignoring necessary reforms simply because challenges exist would prevent progress and limit Indonesia's potential for growth. Another argument is that investing in tourism prioritizes foreign visitors over local communities. However, this perspective overlooks the broader benefits of tourism development. Infrastructure built for tourism, such as roads and airports, serves local population as well. Additionally, tourism creates jobs and generates income for local businesses, contributing to overall economic development. Indonesia stands at a critical crossroads in shaping its future. This thesis has demonstrates that to achieve the vision of Indonesia Mas 2045, the national budget must move beyond the short-term consumption towards a strategic, high-impact investment. First, the current implementation of the MBG program places a massive fiscal strain on the APBN, risking out a crowding out effect that threatens important educational protection, like Program Indonesia Pintar. Second, Indonesia's tourism sector holds amazing potential, yet it remains locked by the lack of infrastructure and workforce development. By investing in transportation and professional training, we can transform tourism into a powerful engine for job creation. Finally, by learning from the United States National School Lunch Program, Indonesia can replace a wasteful centralized distribution with a targeted cash reimbursement model that sources food directly from local farmers. Therefore, policymakers and citizens must recognize the APBN as a blueprint for resilience rather than a mere book of expense. Indonesia must begin reallocating its resources towards a targeted economic support, sustainable tourism, and decentralized nutrition plan. By doing so, the government can transform public spending into a tool that builds genuine productivity and opportunity. The path toward 2045 will not be determined by how much money is spent, but by how wisely it is invested. The decision to invest in a targeted, infrastructure-ready, people-centered economy is the one that will define Indonesia's future. Imagine by the time 2045, we will all age. 10 becomes 30, 30 becomes 50, and 50 becomes 70. And of course, we will all want to see our country be successful than ever. I personally want to see the seed that we've planted and watered for years to produce fruits that our children can happily consume without a cost. And I bet you also want that. Therefore, let us stop only spending for today and start investing for tomorrow, ensuring that every rupiah spent on the national budget serves as the foundation for the thriving, resilient, and golden era of Indonesia Mas 2045. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Rainer. Our panelists today are Mr. Ricky from the school board and Mr. Tony. Let's let Mr. Ricky go first.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wade. Rainer, your thesis, it's kind of popular in the sosmed right now. Everyone discuss about it. Okay, let's go straight to the question. In your thesis at page 3, you cite Cody et al. To claim that higher income households capture most of the subsidy benefit, right? But when you actually read the paper, its main focus is on the total size of global subsidies, not the income distribution. So, can you identify which specific source gives you the distributional data you're relying for?
For now, in front of the podium, I don't really have the...
Maybe you can remember another source or something.
That states that...
Yeah.
There is one source that states that the higher income groups gain more benefits because of the access to greater vehicles and the higher energy usage, according to my that I put in my speech before that I stated.
Okay, maybe you can review the source and search for the specific. Okay, next. Still on the fuel subsidy. you argue that 80% of fuel subsidy benefits upper middle class households, right? If that is true, why do you think the Indonesian government has continued this policy for so long? What political or social pressures might be keeping it in place?
Uh, in my opinion, from that statement, the government has a fear of the demonstration that will happen. But if we actually explain to the people that when we reduce the subsidies gradually and we transform the money from this decreasing, from the gradually decreasing to other sectors that actually can improve their welfareness, we can actually like reduce the subsidy without any problem that is caused from the reduction, like demonstrations and stuff like that.
Okay. Maybe someday, if you are in a leader position, there is some situation that you need to let the smaller damage to ensure that the bigger importance is met. Maybe this situation is happen right now. You know, this situation when we after Lebaran yesterday, we know that the gasoline price should be increased, but the government keep it still low and subsidize it to reduce the tension. You know. Okay, next.
Can I add to that, Mr.?
Sorry?
Can I add to that?
Yeah, okay.
So, in my opinion, to develop, there must be a cost.
Yeah.
And by the term development, there must be a cost, right? Let me use an example of me standing here in the thesis podium. When I want to develop my brain, I need to do thesis even though I hate it, and that's the cost. And that's basically the same thing as as this problem. In my opinion, in order to develop, there must be something that is sacrificed, and in my opinion, the welfareness must be sacrificed. And if we even remove the subsidy, it must be traded with another program to help the citizen, and that's why I say the program of SARA, like in Malaysia, could be one of the best solution for it. Yeah, that's it. That's all.
Okay. Now speaking about the cost, you know that reducing fuel subsidies will free up funds for better programs.
Yeah.
Right. But when fuel price rise, transportation costs rise too, making food and goods more expensive for the poor. How do you ensure transition doesn't hurt the very people you are trying to protect during the period before targeted transfer are in place?
So, how the transition can run smoothly is by using another program that helps the removal of this program. And we don't need to completely copy paste from Malaysia. We can, because Malaysia don't have fuel subsidies in the SARA program. We can actually add that so that we can have a better targeting. And instead of before the problem with the regressive problem that the subsidy gives more to the higher income household, with a better targeting with this subsidized card, it can actually have a better target and remove wastefulness, in my opinion.
Okay. Maybe one of it is direct cash transfer or BLT, right? Okay, now we go to the BLT. If your thesis said that BLT are 10 times more effective at reducing poverty than fuel subsidies, right? If BLT is so clearly better, why do you think Indonesia has not fully shifted to this model yet?
I'm sorry, Mr. Can you?
If BLT is so clearly better, why do you think Indonesia has not fully shifted to this model yet?
Because right now, thank you for the question, Mr. Because right now, as I said before, the government, I think, have a fear of transitioning from fuel subsidies to non-fuel subsidies because of the demonstration that even happened from a a couple of percentage.
But if
increase.
the government compensated with the BLT, don't you think that it will reduce the tension of or chance of demonstration?
Can you explain the question again, Mr.?
Bantuan langsung tunai.
Yeah.
You said that it's 10 times more effective to
Yeah.
reduce poverty, right? If the bantuan langsung tunai is so clearly better, why do you think Indonesia has not fully shifted to this model yet?
Oh.
Yeah.
Because. Can you give me time to think, Mr.? I think the answer to that question is because the government doesn't want to put all eggs in one basket, and putting all the subsidy. That's basically subsidy, right? The BLT into BLT. It can maybe make another issue. Like BLT is not really that efficient either. Like the money that is given to the people can be used for anything, right? Yeah, so I think that's the what do you call it? The what? The reason.
Don't you think that's why the MBG exists? Because the government cannot give the BLT, and then okay, what should we do to make the economic still run and develop? You know, then they built the MBG program.
I actually agree. I think that's one of the reasons they built MBG is to replace this BLT program with a better one. But even though MBG is good, it's not really efficient right now.
Okay. I understand your point. Now, my last question before go to Mr. Tony. If you could only recommend one change to the APBN right now, fuel subsidy reform, tourism investment, or MBG restructuring, which you prioritize and why?
Thank you for your question, Mr. In my opinion, all of them are a good solution to fix in the APBN, but they have pros and cons. Like for example, in the tourism infrastructure, they need to spend more money, and to get that money, in my opinion, we can take it from the fuel subsidy, which as I explained before, can be used for other fuel subsidy removal can be used for other things like transportation and infrastructure development. I think that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Ricky. Mr. Tony?
Thank you, Mrs. Ricken. Rainer, I'd like to compliment first that you choose this topic. And I hope really you are learning a lot from the topic that you choose. And as a young generation, we need to, and you need to, take care of Indonesia. Yeah. And 2024, you will be around 30 something, right?
2045.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
2045, you are 30.
38.
38. So you are in your prime. That's good. Yeah. So again, I would like to compliment and your rationale. I have read everything and really enjoy reading your paper. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr.
Now, I would like to argue as if I am not in your side.
Okay.
Because actually I'm supporting you. Yeah, so I want to see from the other angle. And let's start with this first. In page 8, you said that 80%, 60% of the people is in danger of oil price increase. But in page 18, you said 97 children are wealthy and well nourished. Only 3% are not. Do you remember that?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you explain to us how these two number exist simultaneously at the same time?
Yeah. So in that statement, I think it's not that 97% of the children is well nourished enough, but it's those children are not on the severe food insecurity level, I think. So yeah,
Okay, so you are using your rhetoric and highlighting only 3% that's really
severe
needs
food insecurity.
yeah, severely impacted by undernourished people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but do you have any number, any figure that you know of? How many percent actually not severely impacted, but perhaps is undernourished?
Um, Thank you for the question, Mr. For that data, uh, can I use the one that is at the MBG program right now?
Yes.
On the MBG program, it stated that around 40 million children in Indonesia needs the MBG program. But yeah, as in my research, the MBG program actually gives the children 80 million children the MBG. So yeah,
So sorry to clarify, 80 million people
it's
get
given.
get this MBG
Yeah,
program.
but the one that actually needs it is around 40 million.
So only half,
Around, yeah.
around half, around 50%
Yeah.
need those MBG. Another half doesn't need.
Yeah,
Okay. So that is why you criticize
the MBG.
the MBG because it's only why it needs to be hustle and then do all of this and
Yeah.
spend so much while only half of them is really needed. But it's not 3%, right?
That's
No.
the severe food insecurity.
severe.
I think
Okay.
I need to add a little bit more detail there.
Yes, that's good. Yeah. And in the research that I try to do, it's about 60%
Okay.
of children in Indonesia in the year 2022. This is from UNICEF. Yeah. And do you know the data about how many percent of Indonesian children suffer from stunting? Do you know stunting?
Yeah. I did a small research about that because I don't really have data about that, but yeah, I'm sorry I don't really have
Yeah,
the data.
it's
on
okay
that.
if you don't. It's okay. But 60% undernutrition people is huge. Perhaps the one that you receive, the information you receive is something that better because of perhaps the family situation, yeah. But this is one thing that we need to be the rationale behind MBG. Yeah. Well, let's continue with the MBG. Somewhere in your paper, you mentioned about distribution. Yeah. When we are talking about MBG distribution, usually we talk about SPPG. Do you know that?
The kitchen.
Yes, the kitchen. Can you explain to us what is SPPG and who usually runs it?
SPPG is the kitchen that is rented or even owned by the government to produce a specific portion for the children.
Are you sure it's running 100% by governments?
No, there is some private companies that runs it as well. Because as I said before, some of them is even rented by a private company.
So the organization is government owned, but the place is private or something? Or how is the model that you are thinking?
So the system of how it works together, I'm not really sure because it's out of my research scope, I guess. But yeah, all I know is that there are some kerjasama that is happening between private companies and the government.
Okay. So if you go to the MBG website, they explain as SPPG is actually a badan usaha. It's a completely, entirely different entity that works together with the government.
Okay.
So government didn't own SPPG. Yeah. Their friends or their family, perhaps.
Maybe.
That is another issue that we can discuss. But then that is why I'm asking you, if this SPPG is owned by private sector, why the government needs to take care of the distribution of the food?
Okay. Thank you for your question, Mr. As I said in my thesis, this system is highly ineffective, and it spends so much funds to distribute food safely and efficiently. So, in my opinion, the best solution to fix this is using like the example of the National School Lunch Program in USA, where schools have kitchen on their own, and that actually reduces the complexity of the logistical. And I think that's the best solution that I can think of right now.
Yeah, I will discuss that further. But my question is about that distribution, because you said in one of the arguments is MBG creates high food waste and safety risks due to lack of localized supply chains and cold chain infrastructure. So my question is still the same: if this SPBG exists and this is privately owned, why the government needs to provide cold chain infrastructure, make any kind of transportation arrangement whatsoever? Because that is private.
Yeah.
They don't have, the government doesn't have to take care of it.
So you were saying that why the government needs to handle this cold chain infrastructure?
Yeah, you said that the government needs to create the infrastructure. That is what you said. Is it,
Oh,
is
that
it
is
true?
because at the beginning, before the data that you said before that it was held 100% by the privately owned by company, I got the data that it is owned by both the government and the private company.
Oh.
That is why I said that the government also needs to help on that sector.
Okay,
Or not,
then,
yeah.
yeah.
A lot of people will be negatively affected.
Yeah, I don't know if your source is credible. I myself own a family store, and I know that some people come for MBG program. They are the SPPG buying stuff from my store. This is not government from kecamatan atau kelurahan coming to us, or whoever the government is, from the Minister of Education or the Health, coming and then saying that we need to buy all of those. This is private entity coming and buying. Yeah, just so that you know. But let's focus on the other one that you said earlier about. What was that you said?
The National School Lunch Program?
Yeah, it's inefficient, and that the school needs to own the kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
Now, have you ever find a research about this in Indonesia? Because the government actually have that kind of model, a thought to do that in the past, and there are some reaction from the society, from schools. Have you had that research?
Not. I don't really have that research.
Okay. If you don't, do you know any school besides Cahaya Bangsa who own a kitchen?
I don't really have that data right now, Mr.
You don't know.
I don't really have that data.
Okay. Let me tell you, in this neighborhood, perhaps only us.
Yeah.
We have a lot of school around KBP, right? Cahaya Bangsa is the only one. Even though we outsource it, we started with Cahaya Bangsa owns it, right? So running kitchen is not as easy. That is another hassle.
But it's a good solution. Yeah.
It's a good solution. It's another hassle.
Yeah.
And yeah, If you do the research, then you will find out what people said. Do we have still time? Or
His
is it
20
already?
minutes is actually up right now, so
Okay.
it's done.
Thank-
Good
thank-
job, Rainer.
Yeah.
Okay, so good job, Rainer. So we'll meet friends and family over here at the